Jason Edling with Nateo Lighting. I'm one of the founding principals for Nateo Lighting.
Hi, my name is Eric. I'm a principal here at Nateo Lighting.
And I've worked on all of the roasteries with Starbucks. One of the visions that Starbucks had early on was to have each of the roasteries play to the local qualities, if you will, such that no roastery was the same. They want to be places where the community can gather.
When Starbucks approached us about the roasteries, it was clear that they had a really unique concept about what they wanted to do with these spaces. It was very customer driven and very focused around the experience that the customer would have in the space, with the process of everything from roasting the coffee through the preparation of the coffee, even the storage of the coffee is showcased in these stores.
Using light to complement the storytelling component.
To focus all those individual pieces of the experience that this customer is involved in, and to really kind of make them aware of that process from start to finish.
So I think one of the first things that we try and do is to really break down the space and the experiences. And that usually is a multi-step movement as you move through the space. So when you might address that when you break through the threshold and the entry. What do you see? Where are you likely to move to next in the space? And so on and so forth, such that you're tailoring that experience, whether you're moving up an escalator and you're looking for what other opportunities patrons may have. We begin to kind of break those pieces down, component by component. You know, the final piece, I think, and the ultimate piece is storytelling. And sometimes I think you're not always cognizant of how light is reinforcing a story, but your attention within a space, sometimes whether it's cognizant or subconscious, light can be used to kind of help you focus on the things that you should be seeing. And I think the storytelling piece, which ultimately I think the roasteries are trying to tell a story about exceptionalism in coffee. I think the lighting is basically helping to direct that for the patron. It's one of the few media we can use in there to help pull them through that experience, such that when they leave, they may not be aware of the light. In fact, I would hope that they're not aware of the light and that they're just aware of the wonderful experience that they have.
There's common components of each that carry through all the locations, focused on accentuation of the food, of the coffee, and of these rich, beautiful materials that they were using throughout the space. And so it gave the opportunity for each of the roasteries to be unique and special, and also have this constant identity, this constant feel. When you walk into a roastery, the lighting is always warm, it's always inviting. It feels like you're walking into a coffee house. And
in utilizing warm light, 2700 Kelvin light, which is reminiscent of the Edison bulb. And we reflected that warm Edison-esque type light off of wood surfaces, off of brass surfaces, off of copper surfaces. I think it creates a very warm, inviting sensory experience that you want to linger in at night. One of the thematic moments within the roasteries is the cask. The cask is essentially where equipment and the beans are stored. After they're roasted, then they're getting dispensed to the various bars throughout the roastery. But it was always done in a prominent way in the centermost portions of the roasteries. Whether that be the very first roastery or the last roastery, the cask was always lit in an iconic way.
There's layers of lighting that are interjected in each store to bring your focus to prominent vertical surfaces, to important elements like the cask that permeate through all the stores, irrespective of whether or not you're in Tokyo or Milan or any other of these locations where different cultures appreciate different things as far as lighting and color temperature goes. There was always this common thread that created the roastery experience and made it unique to those locations. At the start of every project, we'd sit down with the Starbucks design team that was associated with that particular location, and they would walk us through, of course, the location, the building that it's in, and they would start to talk us through their initial concept designs.
The first roastery started design for us in 2013, and it was here in Seattle, Washington. It was the basis of the roastery model, if you will. Starbucks paid respect to the neighborhood and made a choice deliberately to utilize the existing terracotta facade and many of the elements that were there architecturally. It was almost 2 years later before we began to design the very next roastery with respect to lighting, which was the Shanghai Roastery was the next one to be designed. The scale of Shanghai was much, much broader. It was the biggest coffee experience in the world at the time. Culturally very different than Seattle, but the same principles and storytelling still applied. I think the big jump from the Seattle Roastery to Shanghai was where we really embraced theatrics and actually used literally theatrical fixtures to promote the roasting experience within the space, such that the lighting changed depending on what the roasters were doing within that experience. Thereafter, the roastery in Milan and the roastery in Tokyo weren't far behind. I think the historic nature of the roastery in Milan was quite different in that the lighting was complementing a historic facade, unlike anything you really have in North America. Through mock-ups at night, you were able to experiment on a very small scale and then basically replicate that on a much larger scale for a very successful composition in the end. The interior of the Milan Roastery relied on lighting that paid homage to the historic nature of the building. Locally resourced stones, materials, so everything was made in brass to match many of the finishes that were there in the roastery. Tokyo, it was a very different experience with respect to lighting, a similar scale, a very strong design from Kengo Kuma with lots of transparency and glass. The lighting is much more minimal and much I would call it lighter, and we keep the lighting expressed very high at the ceiling, and in some sense there's an elegance to the way that the lighting is approached in Tokyo. New York was really the next completed roastery. The level of integration in the ceiling, the level of integration of the lighting into the overall kind of envelope of the building, I think was taken to a new level on that project. Very much pushed the idea of wanting to feel the light and not necessarily see the light. So you see the expression of coppers and woods, but the fixtures are much quieter and hard to perceive.
It's this building right on the corner of Michigan and Lake Streets and has this white cladding, curved window that faces out onto the corner of the street that really kind of opens the store up. And
it's unique in that the lighting approach responds, to the atrium or the rotunda, where the escalators take you through the centermost portion.
It comes down to three really strong elements in the design for the majority of the store. The bright cask, these radial spokes of warm glow coming out through fin accentuations, and then supplementing in where needs be with these nice integrated fixtures paired together wherever we need them throughout the space.
The lighting approach responds, to the atrium or the rotunda, where the escalators take you through the centermost portion of the building, and the lighting essentially radiates from that.
This beautiful sort of iconic exterior shape on Michigan Avenue. So they have the large rotunda, and it travels up 4 floors, and there's an opening that goes consistently up those 4 floors through the full height of the building. So this became a logical place for them to put their focal point, which in most of the roasteries is this large cask structure. So for us, that became an obvious sort of logical place to focus. One of the main lighting moves in the space is that expression of that full vertical element that really kind of draws your eye into the space off of Michigan Avenue. So for the interior lighting of the cask components, it was a little more straightforward in that at each silo there was an overall support structure. There was this perforated shell that we were looking at that we wanted some transparency of by lighting the interior spaces more brightly. And then there were some components within there that we were trying to accentuate, whether those be pipes or silos. And so we started looking at ways to hide fixtures within this structure and disguise them behind metal valences so that you could never look into a direct source, but you were essentially bouncing light around the inside of this cylinder in a way that glowed all of the interior components and let those shine through the exterior of the cask. And so when you put all those components together, you have this ability to create this wonderful interior glow to the cask. That's the first layer of light, is within the breaks between each one of the vertical panels at the floor line, introducing a linear fixture that followed the fold in section of that articulated ceiling. So the ceiling plane would take off across the ceiling that way and move into our radial pattern with glowing stripes and accent lights. And then when you came to the opening in the floor where it met with the cask, we introduced a linear fixture that we worked on with a manufacturer to create a baffling system that essentially shielded any glare from the fixture and allowed the fixture to brightly light the cask, kind of unencumbered by the visual obtrusiveness of looking straight into a fixture. And the way that that was accomplished is that fixture is a narrow profile, a little over an inch. It has a standard LED source. Within that fixture, there is actually a series of shutters, which are adjustable via Allen wrench on the opening of the fixture. So you can actually change the angle of these shutters to tailor the beam spread of light that you have hitting the cask. So at the further locations, you can have a narrower beam of light that covers the cask. But again, if you're standing just outside of that beam, you don't see any brightness from the fixture because the shutter obscures the light source. And the final layer was considering, of course, if you're standing on top of this rotunda piece and you're looking straight down into one of these fixtures, how do we shield these sources from light that way? And so we integrated a second series of horizontal baffles along the length of the fixture that conceal it from view in the vertical direction. Once you're beyond that, you're standing behind the cask, so you see the glimmer of these fixtures through the cask, but you don't get any of the direct brightness from the fixtures. So there's this nice dichotomy of the exterior lighting, which really highlights the form and shape of the cask, in conjunction with the interior lighting of the cask to really kind of play up those interior moments as well. So we can dim down the exterior lighting on the cask, ramp up the interior lighting to bring up certain moments, and play this game of creating this experience and noting the different things that are happening within the cask visually. There's an overarching control system that handles all the lighting throughout the day, and in the spaces that are coffee bars and retail and everything, that system adjusts to fluctuate the light levels throughout the day to respond to daylight inputs and the mood and feel of the space. In addition to that, there's the theatrical component of the coffee making and presenting experience. So when beans fall into this silo, the control system sends a trigger from the mechanical components to the lighting controls to actually brighten up that cylinder to bring that as a focal point from the interior lighting of the cask and really make it glow to draw people's attention to it. What we had to do was come up with a dynamic solution that was integrated with all those mechanical components that form the roasting process and storage process. So working closely with the manufacturers of those equipment pieces to put in contact relays that would then communicate to our control system. It's all very orchestrated and interconnected with all the different systems within the space. The ceiling design within the space was designed to be a custom wood slatted ceiling that essentially emanated out from that central focal point. And the concept there was to create these radial wood slats that traveled throughout the space and essentially created what were, quote unquote, the rays of the sun emanating out from that visual hub. So we started looking at, introducing these glowing stripes of light within that ceiling system that, drive your eye back again to that visual hub once they become integrated with the ceiling space. So we started to arrive at this nice cohesive solution of the channel fitting in with the L shape of the ceiling, really becoming part of the ceiling slat system, wiring and everything coming down through the slats hidden above so that none of that is visible. And then, properly proportioning these rather small fixtures to do the large task that we needed them to do of, lighting pastry counters and experience areas to 100+ foot candles of light. And then to complement that, the other element of the ceiling was a glowing ceiling strip. So to create that glow, because when you switch off all the accent lighting in the space, you can still have this nice sort of ambiance, and none of the customers ever experience this directly, but it creates this really warm kind of golden glow in the space that adds on a layer to the accent lighting and other things that are punching up the seating areas and the bars. And that became an easy integration of placing a simple LED strip on top of one of the slats and building a metal fin extrusion that captured that whole slot. The light bounces off of this painted surface and then is reflected off of this specular surface on the side to create a nice soft diffuse glow of light in each slot without any lamp imaging or undesirable effects. So when you start to put these two pieces together, they really kind of work to complement each other, in that you get this softness and directionality from this glowing ceiling slat that drives your eye always back towards the cask. In addition to that, the normal functional lighting needs to blend in with that wood slat ceiling system as well to create the visual punch we need at retail displays, bar areas, that sort of thing. So what we started looking at is a series of pairs of fixtures. And the reason for pairing the fixtures is functional more than aesthetic. It gives us the opportunity to have 2 points of light right close to each other without making the ceiling a mess full of all these different fixtures sort of spread out randomly. It gives some organization and clustering to the groups. Starbucks was very driven to make sure that these slats were flat and smooth, top to bottom, no gaps for track or anything like that, in a closed L shape. So when we started diving into the design of it and how we accomplish this with fixtures, we started to look at providing a channel system, essentially a low voltage channel where you could take the wires from above, run them through the channel out to these pairs of fixtures that were set on pre-drilled hole locations throughout. So you always had the exact same spacing of the two heads, so no matter where you went in the store, that was consistent. So this whole piece ended up getting integrated with a wood slat detail to where there were actually screw holes coming down through this that would accept the top part of the L and then go down through the bottom part of the L, and the channel itself became sort of a sandwich within the ceiling with a removable cover plate. And then we strategically located these plugs on regular spacings so that no matter how you move the lights throughout the store, you could always cover the appropriate area of floor plate with the right aiming angle for the merchandising or whatever was happening below. And then when you start to get into the design of the heads, it's all about what fits in with the architecture of the space and gives you the output, the beam spread, the color temperature, the glare control that you need in the space. I think the most successful lighting installations are those that become part of that fabric and aren't noticed, and what that inherently means is it can't be a bright, glary source in your eye. That obviously becomes tricky to do in a small profile because your source gets closer to the aperture, all those things. So what we really started to do was look at this cylinder in proportion to the overall L shape of the ceiling and see basically what looked good from a proportional perspective. And that backed us into size of LED module, reflector design, all those things, and how that gets screwed into this channel or integrated with this channel. And then everything else became about the detailing. How do we make it clean and conspicuous, which blends in with the architectural design, but adding in little moments like ball joint knuckles and nicely articulated slot at the top, which kind of makes it special to the location, which helps it blend in with Chicago. By the time we were designing Chicago and we were working on all these custom fixtures, we already had all this great experience with Delta Light on the previous stores.
Essentially, we'd hit our stride, I think, in what I would call rapid prototyping, and that we have a design vision that's been agreed with the client. We're executing that with manufacturing in some sort of shop drawing review process.
And we had a good rapport with the team, and we knew what was possible from a production and from a detailing standpoint. And I think whenever you undertake a process like this, where the custom design of the fixture is so important, you need a partner like that who supports you and provides you with almost instantaneous feedback on your different ideas to really drive the design forward.
Through that we used everything from 3D printing. In many cases, we would build 3D models of out of foam core and what we had that we could get our hands on quickly, and basically to get buy-in from the client, share that with the lighting manufacturer, and then to have them begin that process of prototyping from their end with respect to light performance.
They would fabricate these samples for us and send them to us so we could look at size, proportion. We could actually power them up, put them in the ceiling, study the beam spreads and figure out what optical accessories we needed to make it perfect. Orchestrating all that and coordinating it required a lot of extra input, quick turnaround, sample deliveries, mock-ups, all those things that go into making a project like that successful. So one of the big advantages to working with Delta Light is they do have an international presence, and regardless of where we were working in the world, they were able to support the unique needs of the project, whether that be the simple things like the appropriate power supplies or right voltages, all the way through to the exact mounting of that fixture within the custom ceiling that we were working with in Milan or Tokyo or New York or Chicago, of course.
In many cases, as in Chicago, that light only exists in the world for that single project, which I think is pretty special.
It's 4 floors of very flexible space. There are fixed bars, there's fixed seating areas, but there's also this retail program on each floor that can shift and change as the store evolves. So all the lighting in the space wanted to shift and change along with the floor program in the space.
Because there is so much space or elbow room, we could create lots of different experiences with light throughout there. So whether you're in a lounge and there's a floor lamp next to you and there's a very warm light, or whether you're near the rotunda and you're seeing the cask lit in a more iconic way, I think that there's a multitude of experiences in that journey of passing through there. Just the journey of bringing the bean from the roaster to your cup and expressing that through light.
Chicago for me was a special one because it was the culmination of this broader experience that we had as a studio. Working through the Shanghai design process and then evolving through all the different stores, and Chicago was kind of the exclamation point on the end, right? It was the biggest.
We gained experience as we executed the lighting for the roasteries throughout, such that I think every roastery improved because it had the previous roastery to build on. And
push it a little bit further and see, how special we could make it. And I think that we did that, and I'm really proud of how it turned out.
One of the reasons we went to so much trouble to make the lighting vocabulary unique to each of the roasteries, and in some cases made a completely custom fixture that is only on that particular project in the world. The only way you'll ever experience that is in this one place. There's no other place in the world you can see that light. There's no other way you can enjoy that light in quite that way. And I think we were successful in that. When you go there, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by all of the things that you get to take in. I think Starbucks, Howard Schultz, Liz Mueller, I think they were all exceptional, and that they had a vision for something that was grand. Over the course of numerous roasteries, it didn't waver. We always strived to do something that was unprecedented.
It's one of those unique opportunities as a designer where somebody comes to you and they say, the most important thing is the design. We want this to look amazing. We want it to be special, and help us get there. Be a part of our team that's going to create this thing that doesn't exist in any other capacity in the world.
It helped us improve ourselves through the demands that were put on us to basically deliver at the highest level and to extend their vision in the best possible way. And I think that is what makes the projects so good, is that we had a client that was aspirational and wanting to do something truly exceptional, and they had vision.
They won't ever be repeated. There's this special moment that you've created, and to me that's what's special about them.